You are tuned in to another edition of Americana Music Profiles, brought to you by Americana Rhythm Music Magazine and AmericanaMusicMagazine.com. I'm your host, Greg Tutwiler. Let's jump right in to the next exciting interview. Los Goutos is an Americana band from Boston, Massachusetts. They often refer to themselves as an off-kilter and infectious concoction of folk, roots, rock, country, blues, Cajun, New Orleans jazz, Latin grooves, and more. They are my guests on this next edition of Americana Music Profiles as we dig down in that soup and find out what's behind all of that cool music. So hey guys, welcome to the podcast. I'm talking with a couple of members of the band Los Goutos. Did I get that right?
Yep, Los Goutos.
Okay. So I got to ask, tell me where the name came from.
Well, it's always hard to come up with a name, right? Everybody has different things they pull in, and we had this story about someone that got the gout, and I thought, well, that's an interesting name for a band.
Okay.
And we used it for a few years, I think, as the gout.
But then some of our first initial gigs were at my kids' elementary school fundraising events, and I just felt like I don't know if I want to see posters of the gout in the hallways where my children are
right
on their way to class. It just wasn't quite the message our family wanted to get across to the community. So we Spanglicized it in a way to try to obscure that reference.
Okay,
but stay true to the original intent, so to speak.
So it does kind of lend itself to that ethnic sound, the Mexican ethnic sound of the word, or potentially the Texas Arcana sound. But you guys are really more of an Americana flavored band, not really that kind of Texarkana sound at all, right?
Well, I think it varies. There is, we do love some bands that have that sort of influence. We're big fans of Los Lobos and the Mavericks, and
sure, okay,
and some of our songs actually do have a bit of a Latin tinge. Mike's got a song called "Steal It, Pawn It, Buy Another," which definitely has a Latin vibe. It's got Spanish lyrics in it even. I've got a song called "Tequila Set the House on Fire," which also has kind of a Latin vibe, and those are actually the first two songs on the album. After that, it starts to vary a little bit. We have quite a few different influences, so it's certainly not limited to that.
Sure. Okay. So let me back up just a bit and tell me how you guys actually got together originally as a band.
Well, I guess that started probably around 2006. It was basically me, Chris Gleason, and Mike Eigen. We became friends after hanging out with another friend of ours, and it was kind of an odd combo at first. I was playing guitar and mandolin, and Mike was mostly playing clarinet. And we would just hang out at my house till all hours of the night and morning, covering songs and writing songs, and did that for a number of years. And then eventually Paul, who's sitting here, who was a friend of Mike's, started joining us, and then my brother-in-law Seamus started coming over, and it was mostly just jam sessions, and Paul's coworker Bruce joined us, and after doing that for a little while, we decided to take it out into the public, so to speak.
Right.
Middle school fundraisers.
But even in the beginning of the band, for not much longer after Chris and I just started, because the main thing about the band I think is important to take away is it's all original music. There's 4 original songwriters.
Okay.
And even back in very early days, Chris and I were both writing original songs, and that was the real fire, I think, that got people interested and propelled the band forward.
Yeah, because there's a lot of storytelling going on. That's for sure.
Yeah. I read on the website where you guys kind of describe yourself as I'm going to read the quote here, off-kilter and infectious concoction of folk, roots, rock, country, blues, Cajun, New Orleans, Latin grooves, and more. How do you combine all of those flavors together and cohesively? Because it's I love the sound, but I mean, there's a lot going on there in that soup.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of that has to do with the four singer-songwriters. And, there's a quote from Music Connection magazine when they were writing about our live album that we think fits pretty well. They called us a veritable Grand Ole Opry with a modern sense of humor.
Yeah.
And we kind of like that description because we are a bit of a circus. We on stage, we've got it fairly streamlined. We don't take too long between songs, but we switch singer-songwriter every couple of songs and even switch around instruments. And so each songwriter, we have a lot of shared influences, but I would also say that, I'm maybe a little bit more influenced by, bluegrass and the kind of folk roots, but also bands like Wilco in their even current incarnation. Paul's a little bit more into 50s rock and roll in New Orleans. Mike's got his influences, which I'll let him describe. Tim Maya, Brazilian pop. So
Psychedelic Brazilian pop.
I wouldn't say that all of those influences come together in every song, but certainly across the album you can hear an awful lot of them.
And I think I read where you guys actually have even added horns to that too, right?
Yes. That was a really, something that I think we all wanted. You could hear it. If we had other people come in that were one other person, but it was a disaster. But no, it's something that we wanted, and it's slowly but surely. But Mike, tell the story, because I think Eddie coming in is the most brilliant story.
Well, the horn section is known as the Continental Horns.
Okay.
First of all, it's comprised of Eddie Barrett on trumpet and Emily Grogan, who's also one of the songwriters, on saxophone. And Eddie and I got to know each other, oddly enough, when I was refining my house. And he was my mortgage broker, and he was going through the pictures of the house, that the assessment of the worth of the house, and he started naming all these instruments that he saw in my basement where we rehearsed, and specifics about pickups, and you could just tell he was a musician. And then it also turned out he lived 5 minutes away from me.
Oh, cool.
So I said, why don't you drop by and jam, some night? And he did. He fit right in. Great guy, great horn player. And it's just, but again, there's been a certain quality of serendipity about this band, because a lot of us are old friends, and Eddie just sort of fit right in, and it was one of those serendipitous moments. So.
Right, and then Emily sort of fell in, too, because she was teaching piano to my daughter. So I used to see her all the time, dropping off my daughter, picking her up. And then she stumbled into the Burren one time, saw us finally play, and then I was like, oh, we got to go see you play. And then where we went to go see her play, she was playing saxophone. I was like, oh, God, you got to join.
Yeah. Yeah, because to clarify that reference, we have a weekly residency at the Burren, which is a Irish bar and music club in
cool.
Somerville, Massachusetts, and so we play there every Sunday. And Emily came, sat in a couple times, and then basically never left. I mean, it's been over a year now, and she's been to pretty much every show, and she's great in the horn section, but she's also an amazing singer-songwriter in her own right. So before long, we were like, well, heck, you should be singing some songs too.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier, that the band is based on original music. So when you bring two horns into the mix, do you have to rewrite your arrangements? How does that fit in? Does it change a bit how the song gets played on stage?
Yeah, that's a good question. I know, initially I was pretty adamant that I didn't want horns on certain songs. Partly because, a song like Moscow Mule on the album is a little bit more, has more of a bluegrassy vibe and fiddle and stuff like that. And I didn't necessarily want to muddy the waters with that. Mm-hmm. So they also will do some hand percussion and stuff like that if the horns aren't needed on a song. But they do fit on an awful lot of the songs. And increasingly, because they've now been playing with us live, we do a lot of gigs. We've graduated from the elementary school fundraisers, and now we're playing, 100 shows a year or whatever. They've just become so organic that they can pretty much now, jump into any song and make it work.
Yeah, okay.
If necessary. We've just kind of developed our sound.
I think in the beginning, I charted out one of our tunes. I had an idea in mind already. I mean, I play accordion in the band, so sort of that can lend itself to the horns quite
Sure,
well.
yeah.
So I had some visions, but one of the things, as Chris pointed out, I mean, having our weekly residency is such a great opportunity for them to come in and hone in and,
Sure, yeah.
and to feel the vibe, because that's really what's most important.
Where do you find that your music as a whole fits with what kind of audience? Where do you find yourself, or the what kind of audience do you find your music appealing to the greatest?
Well, elementary fundraisers do not work
Outside of the elementary school audience.
That is a definite no. Yeah, it's a definite no.
Yeah, there's some visuals. Like, you'd really have to see Mike perform to understand what we're talking about. But
One thing that's been great, I think, is that we find, like, you know, there's not like an age bracket. Like, we find it's across the spectrum, and that's great. You know, there's times at the Burren that when people come in, you never know, and they don't know who we are necessarily,
Sure,
but
yeah.
they're dancing.
yeah, you know, it's funny because I think we've gravitated towards the term Americana because it is this umbrella term that
Right.
allows for lots of different roots music influences, but also allows for rock and, you know, other, you know, instrumentation. But it's tricky because some people kind of have a sense of what Americana is, and other people need that defined for them. But one thing that a lot of people just seem to say about us is that we're fun, which isn't really a genre,
Right.
I guess. But it's definitely sort of a lively band, and there's so much going on with the instrument switching and different singers that I think a lot of times, at least live, it matters less to people what genre of music we're performing, and it's more just about having fun and engaging with the band.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think we mentioned it when we started, but you guys are from the Boston area. Do you how far south and west do you travel? Are you a more regional band, or do you get a pretty good travel range?
Yeah,
We don't go past Marlboro.
yeah, we're definitely regional. You know, we're at present, especially with the new album and so forth, we're looking into doing a little bit wider regional performing in the Northeast, but we don't really have the schedule flexibility or the budget to go too far outside of the Northeast, except for maybe with certain exceptions if something came up. But
Well, I like to be optimistic about it, because if someone's going to offer you an opportunity, I don't know if you're going to, yeah, you know.
yeah,
So
we do have a large fan base in Brazil.
Yeah. So I'm guessing some or all of you have other things that you do outside of this particular project.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, everyone.
Yeah, a lot of us have kids. All of us have pretty serious daytime jobs. So there's a lot of us are juggling different aspects of our lives to make this work.
Sure. Yeah.
But we do manage to play on average every week. Well, always every week, and sometimes 2 or 3 times a week, and often until 3 a.m. So we're definitely not afraid to get out there.
I
Yeah.
guess you could say we're doing it for the right reasons. We're doing it because we just enjoy playing, we enjoy writing, and we enjoy that thing that Chris said about people, you know, having fun. Love to be able to be a part of that and make it fun.
I'm guessing then that there isn't very little cover, if any, cover music performed with the band. So when you guys are writing your songs, is it a collective project, or do each one of you bring songs to the group and said, let's try these, and it's kind of more of an individual process?
It's been mostly individual songwriting and arranging, and then bringing it to the band and having people bring what they can to the table, certainly instrumentally. We've had a few co-writes. Paul and I co-wrote a song. Mike and Paul co-wrote a song. I've co-written some songs with my friend Lucy Martinez, who I have another band with, State of Domestics. But haven't done a ton of collaborative songwriting from scratch up to this point.
There's always been enough song. I mean, we went in to record this album. We actually tracked 30-something songs before we whipped it down to the 13th. So there's no shortage of material, which is, I guess, a good thing. And there's always more things funneling in.
Yeah. Tell me about the new record.
Well, again, it's 13 original songs. Emily